Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to give everyone a little bit of time just to get on. But in the meantime, I just want to tell you guys what's coming up and in our programming, a little bit about what we do here. So this program is called the Weekly Spark, for those of you that are not familiar. And we started this program because of COVID. People were needing to be inspired and connected, even though, we couldn't physically be in person. And I was just telling Cheryl how amazing it is that I feel in a way we're reaching more people than we ever did beforehand because everything is virtual. So we're really excited to have Cheryl Finkelstein on this week. And just a little bit about next week. Next week, we are having a program I'm really, really excited about. We're all trying to find happiness and fulfillment in our lives, whether it's our careers, our relationships. So next week, we're going to hear from David Yachnes, who works for Join and is also a life coach. And he's going to talk about his personal journey of figuring things out and transformation, and talk about what he calls the journey of joy. So I'm really excited for that because I think we all could use a journey of joy. Okay, so Cheryl, I am like so excited about this, what you're offering today. First of all, you are so brave. And I really, really so sincerely appreciate that you're willing to, talk about this publicly and share with the world and help people. It's just amazing. I'm not shocked because you're an amazing person, but I am just, just very grateful. I just want to tell everyone who's on that even though we can't see you, we could see who's on, just so that you know. And also you could post in the chat. So if you want to say hi to Cheryl, or you want to comment on anything, or ask any questions, or give any feedback, feel free to do that in the chat. Anyway, so Cheryl and I didn't introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, Sarah Gittleson, the co-director of Spark. And I've known Cheryl now, 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
5 years. And I have been so amazed by this woman because, she has shattered all the stereotypes that I've had about mental illness. She's inspired me by her courage, by her resilience, by her openness, just like over and over again. I'm wowed and inspired by you, Cheryl, and I'm so glad that I could share you with the world because I feel like you have such an important message. And you should know that over the course of this past week, just from having posted about what we're doing, so many people have reached out to me and are so grateful, because even though we've come a long way, but there is so much stigma still involved with mental health. There are so many people struggling alone and silently because there's some shame involved in that, and I think this is so important to have programs to help break that stigma and bring it to the awareness. And so thank you, Cheryl, so much for being here today.
I feel honored that you asked me, actually.
So I would love to just kind of start off with you maybe just telling everyone a little bit about yourself, about your journey.
Okay, sure. I was diagnosed in 1991, right after college, with bipolar 2, which is more of the depressive side. And bipolar itself, it's just different mood changes. And about 2.8% of the world, or United States actually, are diagnosed with this. It was difficult. It was right after college, so I took a job and I ended up having to quit. Like, I had tremendous anxiety. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. So those are my triggers. Like, you have to really be in tune with your body. And of course, back then, I didn't really want to believe it. I thought it was me and not a disease. So fortunately, December 16th, 1991, I swallowed a bottle of pills, and thank goodness, Baruch Hashem, my parents found me and I got a second chance at life. And I don't take that lightly at all. And that's mostly with my journey. I was very successful in college and very successful, with a lot of different things. But accepting that you have a disease and not thinking that it's you, especially mentally, is super difficult, but super important.
Yeah.
So finally, when I found the right therapist and the right, I finally said, okay, this is my illness. It's not me. And people would always tell me it's a disease just like diabetes, just like anything else. But with mental illness, it really took me many years to accept that, and even to stay on my medicine. You know, when I felt better in my 20s, I would go off of it. Now, never. I have great doctors. So, and I never, ever go off my meds.
Wow. And did you, like, in your 20s, that was the first time you were aware that this is something that you were dealing with?
That's when it truly comes out, is
Okay.
from like 22 to 25. It's very normal to find out that they are starting to talk about it in kids, but it's still iffy.
Okay.
But it's mostly from 22 to 25
Yeah.
when you're presented with it. And of course, if you've never had it before, like I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, and I was cloudy all the time. But quitting a job for me, that like did me in. I was like, I thought, you know, no one's ever going to trust me. No one's ever going to hire me. And I truly felt, no, who's going to marry me at this stage of my life or whatever. But thank God I have the ultimate husband who's a huge support system. He actually, the first year of our marriage, change is one of my triggers. So I was changing my job, I was getting married, and I had like a nervous breakdown. And he took the first year of our marriage off to take care of me. And I don't know any woman that would do that, let alone a man. So
sounds like a keeper.
He's a keeper, a big keeper. Yes.
Wow. So how did like people in your life respond when they like heard about that?
They were shocked, to be honest. Most likely, you know, I'd be in the hospital for a week, and then I had all the medical bills. But my parents were helpful, very helpful. I went back, you know, I was living with them. But even then, like they told me, no, you have to pay these bills. This is your fault, kind of thing. And they're super accepting, especially now. And they know I take care of myself really well. But it was, they were a little, I know my mom, unfortunately, was embarrassed, not my dad, but they got over it.
Right. That must have been hard though, to like feel like
it was hard. It was hard, even though they, because I had to have someone come stay with me some of the time at the house, like, because, you know, whatever you're doing, you know, my parents have to sleep. So, and also my brother was wonderful when he was home.
Yeah. And, you know, so I know that you're, you know, you're married to an amazing husband, have 2 amazing kids. How has mental health affected like things in terms of your marriage and raising kids?
Well, that's very interesting. It's difficult, you know. My husband has to take on some of the roles that I do. Now our children are grown, but it's hard for him. You know, he had to jump in as the caretaker, and of course the kids know openly about it, and but still, they, you know, as when they were little, they didn't really understand that much. I always, and then when it happens, I still today feel like a burden. Yeah. I do. But I know it's really important. Just know your triggers, know what's going on. Mine is I'm not hungry, or change is a big trigger for me. But I've learned ways of how to deal with that. And to, you know, which is, it's really important to know your body.
Right.
And what works for you or what doesn't work for you. And I've learned that through years of therapy.
Yeah.
Which is really important.
Right. Well, the one thing I know about you, Cheryl, and I have, since we got to know each other 5 years ago, I've spent a lot of time learning together. She has come to many, many of my classes. And one thing I've learned about you, Cheryl, is that you're someone who's always working on yourself and always growing, whether it's your Judaism or trying to work on your mental health. I think that's probably a really important trait in your process of managing your mental health issues, because you're really just all in on trying to be your best self.
I am. And I do, because I don't want to feel that way. And it really has, like, my spin on it is makes me appreciate the good days and the good times when I'm feeling good. And I think I'm feeling good because I take my meds. I go every 3 months to a psychiatrist, and weekly or bi-weekly I'm with a therapist, and always working on, like, I'm now moving into another phase of my life where I've been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. And now my daughter will be going to college next year. So it's another kind of a change, but I'm actually looking forward to it. I have a lot of list of things I want to do. So
I totally hear that. I was just thinking, I've been seeing a lot of kind of posts about COVID and mental health, and how it's going to have a toll, or it has already probably had a toll on people's mental health, because especially back in March when we were locked down. I'm curious if you could kind of address that, because that's a pretty scary thing. I had the thought, like, unfortunately we have a lot of, obviously, casualties in terms of, people who died or got very ill, but I'm also like so concerned about the people being affected from the mental health aspect.
absolutely. And I've been up and down, to be honest. When you're scared to go out because you think you might get sick, that's a whole other level of anxiety. And the non-socialization, like, I know for me, that's been the hardest. I haven't seen friends as often, or even stuff like this where I like learning. I like being there. I like seeing the expression on people's face or connection. And I think that long-term will be a big problem. But what's great is lots of therapists are doing telehealth, which is how and even my psychiatrist were doing telehealth.
That's
so
great.
Which helps tremendously.
Yeah.
And I've had to call a lot between now and then and switch up my meds or try different things. And I would also say exercise is an amazing tool for your endorphins. And I try to work out at least 5 times a week when I'm feeling good.
Wow.
Yeah.
I should learn from you. By the way, I just want to tell you, I see some questions popping up on the chat, and people messaging me directly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of everything, and then at the end, I'm going to address all questions. So please, Cheryl has agreed to address any questions you have. So feel free to, you could either message me directly, or you could post it that everyone can see, whatever's your preference. So, I have had a lot of, friends and people in my life that have struggled with mental health issues. And, the one thing that I really wanted to learn was, what have people done, whether it's your neighbors, family, friends, to help you when you're going through a rough time?
Well, that was one of my bullet points to talk about, is it's really important to have a support system. Just a few years ago, I was put on a new medicine that put me in total mania. And I reached out to my friends, and people signed up to bring me meals. I couldn't drive, so people helped me in driving to different appointments, or taking me to the grocery store, or whatever it was. I don't have blood family in Orlando, but I have a friend family. And a lot of that was through Momentum. And then I have my other friends too. So that helped tremendously. And me being open about, I didn't have any hesitation to ask, because people all knew I have this disease and were jumped in and were willing to help.
Right.
I think that's super important.
Right. That's such an important point, that the fact that you were willing to be open about it and weren't hiding it gave you that support system.
Absolutely.
That's
you really need it, especially and also one of the things that helped me when my kids were younger, we went through a time where we didn't have a lot of money, but I always had some help in the house because Greg travels, or did now, but he had always traveled. So I always had someone maybe from 4 to 7 to help bath and all that, like, and also to protect myself if I wasn't feeling well.
Right.
That's what gave me comfort. So, and I planned all that in advance with my doctors because I was scared. I was scared to have babies and go off the medicine, but it all worked. Sorry.
It sounds like, no worries. It sounds like a lot of this is really just a lot of self-awareness, like really trying to like being very real with yourself, from what you're saying about what your needs are, what you need from people, what you need, whether it's exercising or being open with your friends, just like really being true to yourself. Sounds like that's a big part of you managing things.
It's a huge part. I mean, and I've gotten the help that I've needed, and for, it's a lot on Greg when this happened. So, he said, "Oh, I need people to bring meals." So I said, I emailed it out, and everyone signed up, and it was wonderful. And he drove me during that time.
I remember that. It's interesting because I think a lot of times it's inspiring what you're saying, because a lot of times I have a hard time asking people for help. Like for me, and really in a way, I think it's funny to think about it, that sometimes we think that if we ask for help, it's almost a sign of weakness. But, hearing you say it, it's really a sign of strength. It's like, I know myself, I know what I need. I'm not going to be embarrassed about it. I'm just going to, do what I need to do. That sometimes being able to ask for help is a strength in itself.
And people really want to help you, but they don't know what to do.
Right.
So when you think about what you need and give specifics, they really will jump in and do it because they want to help.
Yeah. But what about like when someone doesn't, like, not everyone's like you. Not everyone is going to say what they need. Like, what were the kind of things that were the most helpful?
Actually, people checking on me and trying to help or have someone to talk to just about whatever. Really the support system of people just even visiting or sending a card or whatever it would be, but helping out in any way that they could.
Right.
But that starts with acceptance, and it starts with knowing your body, knowing your triggers. Like I know my triggers are, first of all, I need my sleep, and I get where I don't have an appetite or I'm not sleeping, and I'll get what's called racing thoughts. So what I do is I keep a journal right by my bed. So when I have these thoughts, I write everything down. And I still journal today. And also, I wanted to mention that when you're in therapy or talking to your psychiatrist, I always prepare with some notes. Things are going on because you get the most out of your session. And you know me, I take notes. So during the session, I even take some notes with some suggestions, or, I do the homework or whatever. So that helps very much.
A lot of introspection.
Yes, a lot. But it helps to make you have a full life. When I first got diagnosed, I was like, who's going to marry me? Who's going to, want to be with me? How am I ever going to keep a job? And all those things go through your mind. But I had a good doctor who said, you're going to be fine. You're going to get married. You have a mild case. When you're in it, you don't think that.
Yeah.
So.
I wanted to share with everyone here that we did this on our trip to Thailand. Cheryl and I have traveled together a couple of times, and we went on a group trip to Thailand with a bunch of women. And we did an exercise at the time where everyone had a piece of paper and they wrote down things about themselves. There were questions like, do you have anxiety? Do you suffer from a mental health issue? Do you, all these different sort of things. And then other questions like, do you ever wonder if you're a good parent? Just a lot of things that a lot of people go through. And then we folded up our papers into small little pieces and then passed them around, and everyone ended up with a paper. They didn't know whose it was, but it wasn't theirs. And then we had someone stood in the middle, and I stood in the middle, and I read off the list of things, and people stood up if on their paper it said, let's say, for example, I wonder if I'm a good mom, right? And the goal of the activity was stand up for your sister. And I remember one of the most powerful things, well, there were two things. Number one is when we said, does anyone here suffer from some sort of mental health issue? At least a quarter of the women stood up, right? And then afterwards, Cheryl actually got up and spoke about it because she realized in the room there were all these people that were going through something, but they weren't necessarily sharing it. She decided to share of herself. I've repeated that activity several times with different groups, and every time it's the same thing. It's so common, but there's not so many people like you, Cheryl, who feel so open talking about it and sharing it. And, I think you being here is really, hopefully helping people to realize that, this is something so many people go through. I think they say 1 in 4 Americans will suffer some sort of mental health issue at some point in their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that people blame themselves. And I did that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Until I accepted that this is not who I am. This is my disease. And how am I going to deal with that?
That's a big step.
Huge, huge, huge. And it's hard for me to ask for help, but when I need it, I need it.
Yeah.
And I have tremendous people in my life who I can count on.
That's awesome. That's great, because you're such an amazing person. So we had a lot of good friends. So let's talk about stigma, because I think we both agree that there's a lot of stigma out there. Maybe it's not as bad as it was 20 years ago, but it still exists. Have you experienced this sort of stigma? Have you felt it?
Not really as of late, but when I was first diagnosed, I wouldn't tell anybody. Or I felt, it was definitely not this open. I also didn't know a lot about it.
Yeah.
I do think there's still stigmas today. But I wish people could just accept it and be more open. And I think by education of people, that the stigma would get less and less.
Saying just more people talking about it and normalizing
it and wanting to even share their stories about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I'm not the only one. And that's the exercise. I had never done anything like that. And it just kept flowing. I was like, okay. And I actually had several people come up to me after and telling me about a family member who has this, and could I help them? Would I talk to them? And I said, of course.
That's like a really big deal. I think when you have something that opens up, it allows other people to open up, and that's, really just helps, remove that stigma, which helps.
Or even like what they could do to help their loved ones.
Yeah.
Who are suffering.
Absolutely.
Most of the time suffering in silence with nobody helping them. And there are people who, unless you're open to be helped, then you're not going to get help. Because unfortunately, if you're not open to it, it's not going to work. But if you want to get over it and learn how to deal with it, that's part of it.
Right. I would like to hear, one thing, as I mentioned earlier, Cheryl is someone who loves to learn, loves to grow. I met Cheryl for the first time. She came with me to Israel on a Momentum Israel trip. And I would love for you to just talk about how Judaism, spirituality, the Jewish community has kind of played a role in all this.
Through Momentum, it really gave me the confidence to be able to talk to people. And part of Judaism is hope for me.
Right.
So I feel that, when you study the Torah or whatever, there's always hope. And another part of it is tzedakah is one of our things that is so important. So giving of yourself, and my friends, to me, that was like tzedakah. And then when I can and I try to do that. And that is something of my Judaism that I feel is super important. But mostly from my Judaism, I would say prayers and everything, but Judaism teaches us hope. And all the holidays or everything we've been through, it's perseverance and strength and hope. And that's how I relate it to my Judaism. And really the people that I went to Israel with and all these other trips with have really given me the confidence to do this or talk about it and want to help people.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing the friendship. I mean, I've seen the friendship you've made, and it's really incredible. You know, that you've had your sisters, your soul sisters, that you made on that trip. And I personally have loved watching you on your journey, because I've seen you grow so much from, you know, being on that trip. And you know, it's interesting. I have to say, to be honest, I was a little nervous taking you on the trip. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you.
Yes, I was very nervous that I wasn't going to get picked because
you know,
of it.
I hadn't interviewed you. Someone else had done the interview, and I knew, you know, Cheryl's great. She has bipolar, but she really takes care of it. And, you know, when you're taking a woman to Israel for 10 days, that's a lot of responsibility. And I was nervous. And, you know, I spoke to a few people, and everyone who I spoke to said to me, Cheryl is someone who really works on herself. You don't have to be worried. And I have to say that was an amazing decision that I made. I can't imagine not having, you know, you not having knock on with you, and all these other experiences we've had.
I still remember where I was when I found out that I got accepted. Like, I totally know that. I just felt so lucky to have this opportunity.
It's amazing.
Greg was the one that was worried. He's like, if they don't pick you because of that, I'm going to be really upset.
No, you know what? It was, as I said, you've taught me a lot, because it really, you know, as I said, I was a little apprehensive, but you shattered all my like stereotypes and really helped break the stigma for me, because I saw, like, you know, that you were great, and like, and I know you've gone through ups, you've gone through downs, but you take care of yourself, and you do what you need to do, and you're an incredible person. So, you know,
thank you
for that. Is there anything else? We're going to get to the questions. I see a bunch of questions in the chat, but is there anything else that you feel we have some people on here who have struggled with mental health, some people who have people in their family that have, or friends. I think everyone somehow is affected by this, whether it's themselves or someone else in their life. Is there anything else you feel like people should know about people who are dealing with mental health struggles?
My three big things are acceptance, compliance. A lot of people don't always listen to what their doctor says, and that's a really important part. And then if you're part of somebody's life, to help make sure that they're complying or doing it, and to really be consistent about that, and seeing your doctors. You know, there's times where I'm kind of down or whatever, and I don't feel like it, but I know that it's important and I have to do it. So, and to be that support group to whoever is suffering or needing. And you don't always know what they need, but it's really important.
So acceptance, compliance, and support.
Okay. Yeah, those are
really helpful. Those are like really, you know, three really important things. And I assume sometimes with some people, you know, the compliance part is tricky, because even they may not want it, but, you know, knowing that that's the best thing for them.
Yeah, and a lot of times they start feeling better, so they stop taking their meds.
Right.
But they don't realize taking the meds is making them feel better.
Yeah.
I think it's getting better, because even as parents, people are recognizing this in their children.
Yeah.
So
right. And I think also a lot on the media and whatever, it's no longer like, you know, and back in the day there was like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and that was like our portrayal of mental health, you know. Now I think we see like regular normal people, and, you know, even when you see celebrities coming out and talking about how they were on anxiety medication or depression medication, I think that's so huge, because the millions of people around there that are on something because they're dealing with something, you're like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is just a normal thing, just like diabetes or a heart condition. This is another thing that people struggle with.
Absolutely. And I have noticed in recent TV shows and things like that, they will show the character actually going to a therapist.
Yeah.
And process, which is huge because then people can feel, okay, that person's doing it. It's fine. You know, a lot of people take cues from media,
Right.
so social media, every kind of media. But
Absolutely.
it's definitely more prevalent in shows right now that
Yeah.
they show people going to therapists and
Which I think is probably important because then people are more likely to get help earlier.
absolutely.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to start looking at just telling you some questions from the chat.
Okay.
Okay, so one person wants to know, some of these are like a couple questions in one, I might break them up.
Okay.
But you talked about great doctors. What makes a great doctor? My loving person needs the right therapist and psychiatrist and has not been successful. What are the right questions to ask when interviewing doctors?
That's very interesting. It's different for everybody, but you need to find someone you click with. And sometimes it can go a couple times. So when I'm interviewing someone, I ask about what is your training, I have this, like what have you done in the past, things like that. I've been very blessed that I've had my psychiatrist for a long time and my therapist. So, but I almost had to start over because my therapist was going through a hard time. But we were doing phone conversations back then. So it's hard to restart, but sometimes you need to. Like sometimes it gets to a point where you're not progressing anymore.
Right. Finding the right person.
Really just to be open, I would ask what their background is, and you may have to go through a few people to click because, you're bearing your soul and you're hoping they're giving you the guidance and the homework to move on and to better yourself, I should say.
Right. Someone wrote, okay, what is the best way to support someone who's dealing with this? A friend is devastated by things she did while manic. Now she has professional support and is back on track, but she's distraught about the consequences of her previous actions. I don't know what to say or do to help.
That's a tricky one because I've never been in that kind of mania, but as long as she knows what the consequences are, maybe to help her say, well, this is what happened. What can I do for you? Or just show up. I remember Pam Saffron actually gave her book, and that stayed with me, is just show up. Like maybe go to their house, bring them a meal, help with their kids, and then have a play date or, whatever if they know the person, they'll know what that person needs.
Right.
And if they don't, they can ask.
Right. Yeah, I that's one thing I found in general is that when you ask people, some people are not going to share with you what they need, and some people will. Like Cheryl, you are great about that. But I think for some people, you just have to, like I've had the experience where I'll just like text them, I'll be like, I'm making you dinner Tuesday night, like just let me know your food allergies, because I know like the person's never going to ask me, but
right.
And that's likely even a home cooked meal is always appreciated, right?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and that's a great way to help in any regard, or even taking kids, like to have, if they have little ones, play date or whatever. That can just help relieve some level of anxiety or one other thing I have to take care of.
Right. Saying taking some of the stressors away.
Yes.
Right. Or even, I'm sure, like even going to the grocery, like if someone's, I guess now we have Shipt and stuff, but
sometimes I'm too anxious or I feel nervous about driving.
Yeah.
So offering to drive or texting someone, oh, I'm going to Trader Joe's today. What can I get for you?
Right.
So just little things like that.
That's very helpful. Someone wrote that they also suffer from depression and anxiety and they take their meds regularly, but what do you do when depression creeps back in?
There are some days that you're just gonna be like that. When it is for an extended period of time, call your doctor and they might need to change up your meds, especially in women because of our hormones. And it is all connected because it's a chemical disease, even just depression, it's chemical. So that's what I do is I call, and sometimes they'll bump up my antidepressants. Sometimes they'll bump up Yeah, because I'm on several medicines, but sometimes they'll take one down, make one up. Even these little changes can really help.
Right. So it's really just communicating with your doctors
Yes.
and
And really trying, even if you do one thing a day, you clean the kitchen or you order food off a ship, like just one thing. Because when you're in that mode, you just don't want to do anything. You don't want to talk on the phone. You don't want to go out or be seen or um, so just what I do is I try to do at least one thing a day, like even just the laundry. Like, because when you're in this bad depression, just doing laundry or just thinking about making dinner, it is daunting, which you think, okay, that's an everyday occurrence. But
yeah.
when you're in that depressive mode, it all seems overwhelming. So I always use a lot of sticky notes to remind myself to do things.
So you're saying you put like, you make sure that you have a goal, but it's realistic, meaning something that's not
Absolutely.
real, but that at least you feel productive and, you know,
Absolutely.
do you
And
feel,
be forgiving with yourself. Like if you one day you just take the day off and that's okay. It's a problem when it becomes a lot of days in a row.
right.
Like be kind to yourself. Because I get and where I even feel guilty. And Greg always says to me, don't be so hard on the person I love the most.
Aw, so sweet.
He is.
Um, so yeah, so I guess you kind of, I guess by now, because you're so self-aware, you kind of know, okay, I'm going through this. I'm not going to want to do anything. I'm going to pick my one thing. I'm going to
Mhm.
get it done, but I'm not going to kick myself for all the other things on the list because this is where I'm at right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Someone wanted to know that, is there anything you recognize now that you suffered as a child or teenager that your friends or family could have seen that could have helped you sooner?
Not really. I mean, I would want to be alone sometimes in my house, in my room, but not before college. Not really.
Okay. So was it right? I mean, I've heard that before, that bipolar is one of these things that tend to
It comes
kind
out
of,
in the 20s. Yeah.
right. Um, yeah. And that's, you know, that's at like a very formative time in your life, right?
Yes.
When you're when you're, starting your career, starting a
Yeah, and I
relationship.
didn't know what was happening to me. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I was super anxious. Like I had never experienced anything like that before. I'd never
Yeah.
gone to a therapist. I'd never none of that.
Yeah.
So my family really made me, they found a therapist for me and a psychiatrist and different things.
Right.
So today, in today's world, the psychiatrist takes care of the meds and a therapist takes care of the talk. It
Right.
used to be years ago, like when I was in my 20s, the psychiatrist did both.
Right.
But in today's world, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Right. That's interesting because you would think that you need the psychiatrist to be in tune with you that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, my psychiatrist usually they'll give you like 15 minutes, but she always gives me like a 30 to 40-minute appointment.
Right. At least she knows what's going on with you.
Exactly.
Wow. I think it's so, I don't, it's just really so helpful to hear this, even though I've known you all these years, just addressing these questions and really understanding you. Do you mind addressing, and if you feel comfortable, like what is it like for you when you're going through like an episode like that? Like just so that like people could understand,
Yeah, it's a little lonely for sure, but like I watch a lot of TV
okay.
um, because my brain's not thinking clearly. But I do still keep my journal next to my bed, and when I think of things, I'll write things down.
Okay.
Um, that helps a lot. But some days I'm just really like the last week too. I've been really, really blah. Now I do things, but I don't like I come home and I get in my pajamas and I lay in bed.
Yeah.
But I know if that happens for a longer period of time, I have to do something about it.
Right. Right. I guess like when it's starting to really impact your ability to function on a daily basis.
So yeah, absolutely, to live my life.
Okay, wow, Cheryl, thank you so much. You have been so open, and I think you're sharing the fact that we had so many people that joined and such an enthusiastic response, I think just shows how important this is, how relevant this is to so many people, whether it's from themselves or someone else in their life or from a friend. And I think, you know, you did such a mitzvah by being here today
Thank
and
you.
sharing with everyone.
If I even helped one person, I'm so happy, and I feel so honored that you allowed me to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been so lovely. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And hopefully we get to see you again soon. I see you got, Cheryl, some private messages. I'm going to forward them to you, Cheryl.
Okay.
If anyone wants to reach out to us, please let us know, and we can put you in touch with Cheryl if you have any questions.
I am willing to talk to anybody at any time. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. So, yeah. I know some people might not. Yes, and I know some people might not want to post on the chat, but feel free to reach out afterwards. And Cheryl, someone who, as you see, is so willing to share herself, and I'm sure it will be willing to be in touch with you if you have any questions. Cheryl, I do want to take a look at the chat. A bunch of people have told you how amazing you are and how proud they are of you and how much they love you, which is not surprising because you really are a treasure. So thank you so much.
Sarah.
And have an amazing rest of your day.
Okay.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.